So again, welcome everybody. My name is Eric Stites with Franchise Business Review. I am founder and CEO here at Franchise Business Review, and this session is Making a Leap, 5 Key Steps to Business Ownership. I hope first and foremost that everybody is safe and secure somewhere and healthy and all this craziness that's going on. And I know it's a strange time for everyone, but we're going to get through this, and it's actually going to be a good time for business ownership once we do. And I think now is a great time to explore that. If you've been thinking about owning a business for a long time but haven't quite pulled the trigger, so to speak, I think now is a good time to prepare for that. So like I said, we're going to talk for about 20, 30 minutes. I'm going to just kind of go through a couple of slides here, and then we can open it up to Q&A from you and ask and answer any questions that you have. Just go ahead and type them into the chat window as you think of stuff as it comes up, and we'll get it addressed as quickly as possible. So, when we think about buying a franchise business, there's really 5 steps in this process. And, it begins with exploration, and then a step that a lot of people do skip is kind of the education process. So we're going to talk a lot about getting educated. Research is when you basically get narrowed down to a couple of different concepts that you're considering. There's some fairly deep research that you need to do on those brands before investing. Planning is obviously a huge part of that. And then ultimately, the last step is making a decision. And, quite honestly, for a lot of folks that look at franchise opportunities or business ownership, at the end of that process, they decide, you know what, business ownership isn't for me, and I'm going to get a job or do something else. And that's fine. Obviously, we want you coming into franchising with your eyes wide open, and to basically have the best experience that you can. So, business ownership is not a silver bullet to getting rich quick, and it's certainly a passion of a lot of hard work and a passion of love. But business ownership is also a pathway to financial success for a lot of folks. So, if done right and you do your homework, it can be very successful. And so that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. So the first step when we talk about exploring is really, it starts with what I like to say, it starts with the why. Why are you doing this? And, you really explore what it is that's driving you to want to own a business. Quite honestly, for a lot of people today, with what's going on in the economy, a lot of it's going to be driven by unemployment, unfortunately, and that can be a good kind of motivator for people that have always wanted to own their own business and haven't taken that leap. But it also, on the flip side, you don't want to go into business just because you're unemployed and if business ownership isn't right for you. So you really want to explore that, do a self-assessment, and really understand, what are your skills that you're good at? Is business ownership something that you're comfortable with? And, if the answer to those questions is yes, and you've always wanted to own your own business and you've thought about this for a long time, then obviously we can talk about that process and the steps to invest in a good business. But just because you're unemployed and your options look fairly limited right now, that's probably not the best reason to buy a business. And certainly as the economy comes out of this turmoil over the next couple of months, unemployment will reduce, jobs will be available. So if finding a job is a better path for you, then that may be a better option. So that starting with that why and really kind of understanding what's driving you to own a business is really important. When we talk about franchising, a lot of people they think about the food industries, businesses that they see when they're driving down the highway. But the reality is franchising goes across every imaginable industry that you can think of. So whether it's advertising and sales, home services, the travel industry, retail services, you name it, there's a franchise business or multiple franchise businesses operating in that space. And so, don't just think, a lot of times when you start to talk to your friends or family and you're thinking about buying into a franchise business, people are, immediately think, oh, McDonald's or Subway or whatever it may be. Um, but those big household brand names are just a very small portion of what's out there and what's available. And there's lots and lots of businesses in all different shapes and sizes and investment levels that are available today. And we'll talk about that. I mean, from a numbers perspective, there are probably about 3,000, 3,500 franchise companies operating in the United States, and add to that another 500 or so based in Canada that are franchising in the United States. So it's pretty close to about 4,000 different types of businesses that are available. And that number is growing every year. So there's new businesses, obviously, that pop up every year. And there's different options that become available. So the next step is really to educate yourself. And while we are hunkered down for the most part, a lot of us, and kind of housebound for the next couple of weeks and maybe months, this is actually a great time to do that. Some resources to look at when you have some free time: Franchise Business Review, our own website, obviously, is a great place to start. Franchise.org is the International Franchise Association's website. They are the kind of the industry organization for all of franchising. So there's a lot of great resources there. Franchise Times and franchising.com, two great resources for just industry information, as well as the SBA. SBA.gov has a great business guide and learning center with good basic resources for people that are wanting to learn about business. Again, get educated. Now is the best time to really take some time and understand what franchising is all about, and what business ownership is all about, and learn as much as you can. Couple of great books to read: Franchising for Dummies and The Educated Franchisee. Again, no offense to anyone on the Franchising for Dummies, but it's a great resource. Talks about franchising from both the franchisor and the franchisee perspective, and what the franchise relationship is all about. The Educated Franchisee was written by a franchise consultant named Rick Bizio. It also has a workbook that comes along with it, and it's a great guide to kind of help you through this process of educating yourself, learning about business, exploring different franchise options. So I definitely recommend those. I want to talk about our own website too. Let me just pull that up real quick for folks. I know many of you have already subscribed to our email list. If you haven't, certainly go to franchisebusinessreview.com and click on the big blue free subscription button in the top. That will get you emails from us and new opportunities that come up, franchise information and news. It also gets you access to our guides. Down here at the bottom of our homepage, you'll see our print guides, and those get sent out quarterly in digital format, so you'll get access to those. But what I want to really highlight is the Learning Center. So in the upper navigation, you'll see a link to the Learning Center. And in there are a number of different categories, from Explore, Educate, Plan, and Launch. And what I want to really emphasize here is we're actually in the process of updating the design. The designer that originally did this, I think, did a poor job of kind of explaining what's behind here. And so these categories, while it looks like there's only 3 items here, there's a lot more behind each one of these categories. And all you have to do is click on the actual title. And you can see this tiny little red arrow. We're going to update that design, but if you click on any of those headings, there's a lot more resources and articles behind there. So I just wanted to point that out for folks and make sure that they understand that there's a lot more to our website. You can also use the search functionality up top to search for specific topics or specific brands that you may be interested in, and explore all the award-winning companies that are on here. Just to tell you a little bit background about Franchise Business Review. So all the research that we do is based on franchisee satisfaction. So we survey tens of thousands of franchisees every year and understand how they're doing in their business. And, is the franchisor giving them the support that they need? And are they successful financially? And are they getting training? And do they, like the business? And all those types of questions that people really want to know. And we survey hundreds of franchise companies every year. We've surveyed over 1,200 franchise companies in the last 15 years in doing this. And I can honestly tell you that really, of all the companies that we survey, only the best of the best, kind of the top 30% or so that we survey actually make the list. So any of the companies that are featured on our website are companies that we've surveyed and we know are good companies, have high franchisee satisfaction. We do various awards throughout the year. So our annual top 200 franchises comes out in January, but we do low cost franchise awards. We do multi-unit franchise awards. We do best for women, a whole bunch of different categories. So if you can come back to our website frequently, you can see some of those latest reports. And as I said, if you subscribe, you'll get those quarterly guides sent to you in email format as well. The other thing to look at is in the reviews section, you can actually see the feedback and the reviews that we've done for each of the companies. So if you choose a company that you're looking at, you can see their overall score and see the different sections that we look at in the survey when we talk to franchisees and what their scores look like. So those are available there as well. So certainly check those out when you have time. And I think there's a lot you can learn. I'm going to say it over and over again. There's nothing more important than talking to franchisees in this process and getting educated. And that's something that I think many of us many of the people that get into franchising don't do enough of. So once you've kind of read up on franchising and kind of understand what it's all about and thought about some of the businesses that you may want to go into, you want to certainly reach out to franchisees, and we can talk about how to do that, and talk about their experience and learn from that. Jump back here to the presentation. So part of this education process is also involves getting financially educated. And what I mean by that is, you don't have to be a CPA or, a finance expert to own a small business for sure. But you do need to have a basic understanding of how cash moves through a business, what assets are, what liabilities look like, how do you generate sales and ultimately profits, and understand that kind of business model. And also understand, how it impacts you from a tax standpoint, from a debt standpoint. Many people take on loans when they buy businesses. Hopefully you're going to, be able to put some money away from retirement, and have your own salary, which is going to help you build net worth. But really understanding those kind of basics of small business finance is important. There's a lot of great resources online. Certainly you can go to a local community college online, and often they'll have resources there for basic small business accounting and finance. And there's other resources out there. But also talk to an accountant. If you don't have an accountant today, That's something that you can do in these times, is start reaching out to local accountants and develop those relationships now, and just chat with them and say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. This is the type of business that I'm thinking about buying. What is their advice as far as, understanding kind of the basic financial pieces to that business. Certainly the franchise company will provide you some of the information along the way, but it's really important for you to have a good understanding of, how business finance works. Again, how do you generate sales? What are your expenses look like? What does your potential profit look like? And all of that. And so, the big question, I also do a presentation on how much money you can make in franchising, where we kind of do a deep dive into this. But, it's not, the number one question everybody wants to know is, how much money am I going to make in this business? And so it's not an easy thing to answer, and the franchisor is not going to tell you necessarily. Some of them tell how much they make, how much their franchisees make overall on average, but certainly not. They're not going to tell you you're going to make, $100,000 a year or $150,000 a year. It really depends on your performance, obviously, as a franchisee. So, again, we can talk a lot about that and help you answer questions, but getting educated is really important. So the next step in the process is really the research process. And when you research a franchise opportunity or several franchise opportunities, you really want to do some pretty good homework on that brand. At this stage, I mean, you've done a lot of exploration, you've done some initial research, but certainly when you kind of do that deep dive, I mean, it does require quite a bit of time to do that. Most people aren't going to do this on, a dozen franchises. Typically you'll kind of narrow that down to 2 or 3 opportunities that you're really exploring before you do kind of that deeper research. But, it's really important to, talk to the franchisor, get all their marketing materials, which, most of which are online today. But really collect all their resources, talk to franchisees in their system, and ask them what their experience has been, and really understand what the training is like, what the business is like, what do you do to be a successful operator, all those types of things. And the franchise company, one of the pieces of information that they provide you is called the franchise disclosure document, or FDD. And every franchise company is required to have an FDD. They will, as part of inquiring to the brand, and when you get further along in the franchise awarding process, they'll give that to you. Some franchise brands give it to you very early in the process, at that first kind of introduction. Others give it to you a few weeks later. And there's some resources online where you can get franchise disclosure documents as well. But generally speaking, these are, 200 to 300 page franchise documents that are kind of legal documents that are, very overwhelming. And again, many people get them and don't really know what to do with it. Don't know how to interpret it. We can assist with that for those folks that want some help there. We do have some information about the different areas of a franchise disclosure document for sure. But it's important to really read through there. There's the nice thing about franchise disclosure documents is that all the main items in there are standardized across all of franchising. So there's 23 required items, and then they also include the copy of the franchise agreement in there. So the franchise agreement is the piece of the document that you're going to sign when you become a franchise owner, that's going to bind your relationship with the franchisor for 5 or 10 or 15 years, however long the term is of the franchise agreement. The franchise disclosure document is going to include a copy of that, but then it's also going to include other information about who the franchisor is, their management team, their history. Do they have any legal lawsuits against them, legal action against them, number of units, training and support, a whole bunch of different information in there. So it's really important to look at that information, read through, get comfortable. The franchisor, again, is going to help you get through that process. But you also want to, look at it from a third party as well. So I always recommend that anybody that's thinking about getting into franchising, hire a franchise attorney to review those documents. Um, Generally speaking, a franchise attorney is going to charge you probably $1,500 or so, maybe a little bit more than that, to do a full review of a document. In some cases, a little bit cheaper if it's a brand that they've done recently. But that is probably the best money you'll spend. And again, you're not going to do that until you're very serious about moving forward with a brand. But that is the best money to understand what's really in that document and how it can affect you, long term. And it's important to understand that a franchise company, for the most part, their franchise agreement is, kind of take it or leave it. They can't make special deals with every franchisee they bring on. So those are really standardized documents. But it is important to have an attorney, and it's a franchise attorney, not just a regular attorney, who knows franchising and understands what all of those clauses mean, explain, how that could potentially impact you as a franchise owner. So again, when you get to that stage, one of the best resources for attorneys is the International Franchise Association website that I mentioned earlier, the IFA, which is franchise.org. And they have a supplier directory in there of attorneys, and you can look up an attorney. They don't have to be anybody. You can obviously do this over the phone. You don't necessarily have to be somebody in your local area. And I often recommend an individual out of New York who does this a lot. So if anybody on the call wants help with that, just reach out to me, and I'm certainly happy to do that. I will provide at the end of the call contact information for us, and we'll obviously answer as many questions as we can as well. So, the next step in the process is really the kind of the planning stage. And, this is where you've pretty much decided, you're going to move forward with this business, but you really need to kind of figure out, what does this business look like over the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever your window is. And again, that kind of goes back to where you started with the why am I doing this? And so everybody's going to have a different goal in mind. It may be, I want to own this business for 5 years and then sell it. It may be, I'm semi-retiring, but I can't, not work. So I'm going to run a business for 10 years and then fully retire. You may be very early in your career and you're planning to own this thing for 20 years and pass it off to your kids. So understanding, what your goals are and how that kind of fits with this business is really important. And what I always tell folks is, there's worst case, best case, and most likely. And so I always tell people to plan for the most likely scenario, from a financial standpoint. Have a plan B for worst case scenario if things don't, work out quite as planned, and how you're going to go and get additional capital if you need it, and then work to make best case scenario happen. The worst thing that can happen to you in owning a business or starting a new business is running out of money. And so again, understanding, what the business costs are and how that ultimately generates revenue, and when you'll have enough revenue in the business to cover your costs, and what that total cost load looks like is really important, and walking through that with the franchisor, calling up franchisees or visiting franchisees and their network and saying, this is my plan, this is what I think, what do you think? What you don't want to do is you don't want to call up a franchisee who you don't know and say, oh, this is so-and-so, I'm thinking about buying your franchise. How much money did you make last year? Because what they'll do is they'll hang up. But if you do your homework and, you've run your numbers and you've kind of got a good estimate of what you think your financial performance will be, then a franchisee will be very happy to talk to you and basically say, oh, I think you're a little high here or a little low there. And, this is what my expenses look like. And this is what my cost of goods look like and all that. And so that will, again, getting educated first before you do your research and talking to franchisees will be, help you be much more prepared and have the franchisees be much more open to you in part of that process. So, the biggest thing in this equation is, franchisors here on the left are very clear about what the initial investment is to get into a franchise. So, franchises, as I said, come in a whole range of different investment levels. Some as low as, under 10,000 for, a home-based travel agency, all the way up to, several $1 million for a, full service restaurant or, a hotel or something like that. The vast majority of franchises are somewhere in that, $75 to $200,000 range. There's definitely a lot of opportunities under $100,000. And when I say that, what I mean is, so you've got the total initial investment of this business. It's very much like buying a house. So you go out to buy a house and say you're buying a house for $300,000. You don't have to put $300,000 in cash down. Obviously, you put down a percentage, usually 10, 20%, and, you finance the rest. The same is true in franchising for the most part. And again, different businesses have different ability to finance different things. So in some cases, there's not a lot of things to finance in the business. It's really, your sweat equity. And so the initial franchise fee and those sorts of things, the capital that you need to put into it are going to be pretty much the same. In other cases, like if you're, like I said, $1 million restaurant, you're probably only going to have to put down 20% of that and finance the rest. So you're financing the equipment and the real estate and all of that. So again, it depends on the specific business that you're looking at and investing in. But this red curve here is really important to understand because on the left, you've got that initial investment, but for some period of time, most businesses lose money. There's very few businesses that, generate positive cash flow from day one. So, you're going to lose money for a period of time, hopefully not that long. And then you're going to kind of turn that curve and start being profitable and making money. And then you get to that kind of break even point where, what you've put into it is equal to what you've gotten out of it. And then it kind of grows from there. And franchise companies, as I said, are very clear about explaining what their initial investment is. They also talk a lot about, on the right here, what their kind of average sales are. Typically, most franchise companies will tell you our average sales, gross sales, again, top line revenue is X, Y, Z. That has nothing to do with profitability. And again, what you don't know is how much capital you're going to need to get through this curve. So if you're investing in a, say $100,000 business, you may actually need $200,000 in capital to get to that break-even point and positive cash flow. Some franchisors are very, do a good job of explaining that. Others, not so much. And as I said earlier, like the worst thing you want to do is run out of money along the way. A lot of businesses die every day, just because they run out of cash flow. So you want to figure out, you want to do your homework and figure out what your total cash need is going to be over that period of time during, the startup phase, and then, have a cushion in there or plan B as to, where are you going to go to get money if you run low. The bank is not always a great option. Banks are really good at giving you money when I always joke that they're good at giving you money when you don't really need it. If you've got a lot of collateral and savings and such like that, you can get a bank loan fairly easily. But when you've got a new business and you're 6 months or a year in and you're very, you've burned through all your cash and you've put your personal savings into it and you're out of money and you need a little bit more, that's when banks get very tricky to get money from. So again, having a good plan, whether it's, money from friends and family, or, credit cards or whatever, and just being very conservative when you're doing your planning, to think, oh, I think it's going to take me 50, but, I want to make sure I have 100 in the bank just in case. Because again, a lot of good businesses fail every day, no fault of their own, just because they run out of the capital that they need. So, again, this is where franchisees are going to be extremely helpful. When you've done your homework and have some projections to show them and talk to them about, franchisees will be very happy to explain to you what their experience was, and help you understand, it might take you a little longer, it might take you a little shorter, these might cost a little bit more, all that sort of stuff. So again, it's all part of doing your homework. To help with that, we have a tool we like to call My Franchise Life Plan. And this is an Excel spreadsheet. If you're not very familiar, or if you don't love spreadsheets, this may give you nightmares. But this is a document that shows a couple of samples of some business models over a 10-year period of time, and what their revenue, sales were up here at the top. And I understand this is very small for folks. We'll give you access to this. It's on our website. If you want to just go to our website, and if you type in Franchise Life Plan in the search box, it'll pull it up. Everybody that's on the call will also will send out a copy of this as file, as well as the recording from the webinar, so you have that. But this just kind of walks through, again, all the different pieces of owning a business. And life is an acronym for liabilities, income, financial wealth, and equity. And so what do your liabilities look like through the life cycle of your business ownership? Thank you, Will, for sending out that link right now too. So everybody that wants a copy of this, Will just sent the link to the page in the chat window. So the liabilities are things like debt that you're taking on to acquire this business, a loan, taxes you may have to pay once you're profitable, those sorts of things. Income, obviously, is if you're lucky enough to have a business that generates positive cash flow, what's that income picture look like as far as generating income? And obviously a chunk of that income has to go back to paying off debts and reinvesting in the business and wealth contribution. What I want to do is just jump back here real quick to this diagram. So, I want to be crystal clear when franchise companies talk to you about how much money their businesses make. They're talking about the income of the business. And generally speaking, they're talking about sales of the business. So when you talk to most franchise companies, when they give you any kind of financial numbers, generally those are gross sales numbers. So that's top line revenue of the business. And then you've got all your business expenses that come out of that. And at the end of the day, you have profit of the business, or income of the business. But then out of that business profit comes taxes. You have to reinvest in the business to keep, you have to buy additional assets. You have to pay off liabilities. So you're paying off debt. So if you have a loan, you're going to be paying that. And so at the end of the day, hopefully there's, some take-home income that is, coming to you as a salary, or, helping you grow your net worth. But, again, doing that math to figure out, what that looks like is critical. And that's why, the life plan is a good starter place to see, okay, how much money do I think the business is going to generate over this period of time? And, again, when I'm paying off my loans and, paying taxes and all that other stuff, what does that look like at the end of the day for me? The other part of that is the equity that you're building in a business. And so that's the best part of business ownership relative to, having a job, is that hopefully you're building some equity in something that you can sell at the end of the day. And so it's not just about how much salary you can generate. It's, what's this business going to be worth? And that's a good question to ask. Certainly the franchisor, they can give you some idea typically about what their businesses resell for. And it's great if you can talk to some franchisees that have recently left their system and sold their business. In the franchise disclosure document, one of the items that is disclosed in there is both a current list of franchisees as well as a list of franchisees that have recently left. And those are very difficult people to get a hold of, as you can imagine. Once you've kind of checked out of a brand and sold off your business, you don't want to you don't want to field a bunch of phone calls from folks. But if you can talk to those people, that's a great opportunity to kind of understand, one, why they left the business. I mean, maybe they were just retiring or just wanted to get out. But two, what was their resale value of the business? So, understanding that at the end of the day, what is this nest egg, of the business worth? And then how much equity or how much income am I going to be able to build over that period of time as well, and salary or other, kind of franchise business owner benefits. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits as a business owner. You get to write off some expenses that you might not otherwise as an employee. But certainly, again, that's where you need to get educated and talk to an accountant and understand, what that looks like as a business owner. So, the last step in the process ultimately just comes down to, making a decision and moving forward. And so, what I tell people is that, typically, from the time that you start thinking about, buying into a franchise to the time when you actually sign that franchise agreement and, take the leap, generally speaking, most people do that, 6, 9 months, 12 months over a period of 6 months to a year. It's not a decision people take lightly. Obviously, again, we talked about the current economic conditions and what's going on. So, that's going to force people to have to make decisions about their career probably sooner than they ultimately would have. But again, we want to make a smart decision. And if you go through this process and say, hey, I don't think franchising is for me, I think that's great, because, again, we only want people coming into franchising that are, eyes wide open and educated. And, franchising, I think, is great. It's taking hopefully a proven business model and, replicating that in your local market. And, whether you just want to own a small business and operate it yourself, or whether you want to grow and have multiple locations and be a multi-unit franchise owner, obviously there's a lot of different paths within franchising, but it's business ownership, and business ownership is, while it does help people build wealth, it's not easy, and franchises, just like other businesses, fail all the time. What I would caution you right now is, as part of this process, you want to definitely develop relationships with local bankers, because that's important as far as getting financing for a business. Certainly, many of the franchise companies that are out there are SBA approved or pre-approved. So especially focus on local SBA lenders in your market. But I would caution you to reach out to any of those in the next couple of weeks. Given what's going on in the economy, they're dealing with a lot of people that are already in business trying to get emergency loans. So certainly you can do research and find out who the banks are in your area that do SBA lending, and develop that list of contacts. But they're probably not going to get back to you, for at least a month until a lot of this initial emergency financing goes through. And then after that, they'd certainly be happy to talk to you about what opportunities you may be looking at. So that's a piece. So that's basically the slides that I had. And what I want to do is just kind of open it up for questions. Will, I know a number of questions have come in while I've been jabbering on. So if you want to share some of those with me?
Yeah, we had one question come in. It looks like it was disregarded, but it was around the ROBS method.
Mm.
And I guess just kind of the different specifics around liquid capital required for by the franchisor and what kind of things counted, what kind of other things people should maybe research when determining whether or not they qualify for the different financial requirements that franchisors present to prospective franchisees.
Yeah, the ROBS piece for folks that a lot of people aren't familiar with this, and so and the acronym ROBS is a terrible acronym because it's basically using money from your retirement account to fund a business without paying penalties on that. Um, and I don't know why they came up with the acronym ROBS because it's not good. But there's a number of companies out there that can assist with this. One of the financial partners that we have is a company called Guidant Financial, and you can actually go to the financial center on our site and inquire to Guidant Financial, and they can help you assess, how much money you have in your retirement fund and how you can use that for funding a business. I mean, basically, the way it works, real quick, is you open up a C corporation, basically, that your new business is going to be part of. And then as part of that C corporation's 401k, you roll money from your retirement account into that retirement account. And then instead of investing the money in like the stock market, which most retirement accounts are invested in, you invest it in your own business. So there are fees required to set it up. It's not inexpensive. It's generally about $5,000 or $6,000 to set that up. But again, you don't pay any penalties, early withdrawal penalties that you would if you just took the money out of your retirement savings. So it's basically borrowing money from yourself and then you pay it back. And the time frame to pay it back is much more open than it would be if you were getting a loan. So it can be a good pathway for folks, especially folks that may have significant dollars in retirement funds that they can't really touch for a number of years. So it is a good option. I mean, people use it to buy real estate as well, as an investment property. So it can be a good opportunity for people in franchising. I guess I would caution you to just, if you only have, $100,000 or $50,000 in retirement savings and you liquidate all of that to put into a business, and again, you hope you're going to be successful, but if the business fails, not only do you lose the business, but you also have just lost your retirement savings too. So just I would caution people to consider those risks and understand what the total risk is. But again, that's a great opportunity to talk to your accountant or financial planner about opportunities like that.
Cool.
Other questions people have?
Another question I had was, you had that one suggestion, kind of just taking into account the kind of madness we're in right now. You suggested that maybe holding off on reaching out to your local bank. Do you have any other timing specific suggestions? Like, should people be reaching out to franchisors now? If they have a list of franchisees, should they be making those calls right now? Should they wait for things to kind of settle down a bit? Or do you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
any sense of kind of maybe what steps are best right now and what steps maybe are best left for a couple
Yeah.
weeks?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, obviously we find ourselves in very crazy times, and there's very, very few businesses that haven't been impacted significantly by this, including franchise businesses. Obviously many restaurants are closed down or just limited to takeout. Many other retail establishments are completely closed. So it's a very stressful time for a lot of franchise companies. I would say most franchisors, the franchise corporate office right now are dealing with supporting their franchisees, and helping them through this and helping them get emergency financing to get through some of this. So, there are exceptions, but, right now, to your point, Will, is, reaching out to a franchise company. They're probably not going to be a lot responsive to you. And I would definitely hold off on reaching out to franchisees right now, just because they're in the thick of it, trying to, secure their own business. So it's probably not a good time for that. I think it's a great time, like I said earlier, to do that initial research, look at the different opportunities that are out there. Think about, again, this is a very odd recession economy bump that we're in right now, and hopefully we're going to come out of it as quickly as we went into it. But certainly, this is a good opportunity to look at how different businesses perform, in down markets versus up markets. The last 10 years has been very, everything's been growing. And so, there haven't been very many unsuccessful businesses, but, as things tighten up, unfortunately, things tightened up a lot faster than anybody could have ever imagined. But it's a good opportunity to see, okay, these businesses can survive through rough times as well as thrive in good times. So those are things to think about. And, when you look at the different industries or business models that you're thinking about, just ask yourself, how would this business, what risks does this business have in a down economy? And it's not always that obvious. I've been on a bunch of webinars this week with the International Franchise Association and talking with franchisors and franchisees that are out there. And, even restaurants that were predominantly drive-through or takeout and delivery businesses, they're struggling because a lot of their suppliers are shut down. So they're having trouble getting product. And so they've had to shift from, certain suppliers, and in some cases change the product that they're offering because of that. One quick example is a wing business that did a lot of takeout, but their supplier that was providing fresh wings to them, chicken wings, got shut down or got dramatically reduced in their capability to deliver product. So they had to shift over to a frozen product that, may not be as up to their normal standards, but, it kept them in business, obviously. So again, the subtle ways that what's happening today, how it affects businesses different ways is not always that obvious. And like I said, you don't want to probably reach out to franchisees today and ask them those questions, but in a month or two, when hopefully this has started to pass, we'll have a lot more information about how businesses certainly performed, and you can talk to franchisees then, and what they found. And, and this is where I think the best franchise companies shine. The biggest benefit of buying a franchise business versus, going into business for yourself is that you have the support behind you, not only of the franchisor, the corporate headquarters, but also this network of franchisees. So, that's the beauty of franchising, is that, if I own local Eric's barbershop, I'm on my own when something like this happens. But if I'm part of, Sport Clips or, a large national brand, I've got, a very well-established franchise company behind me and a whole bunch of other franchisees out there that I can reach out to that are in the exact same situation I'm in, and get resources from. It's been amazing. As tragic as this incident has been, it's been amazing to see how many of our clients have responded so quickly and helped their franchisees. In some cases, if your business has been mandated to close, there's not a lot you can do to help, but at least they're there to support and, provide that emotional support. And you've got a network of franchisees to do that as well. So.
Cool. You just touched on a lot of the challenges. We had one question come in from Lance. I think he was kind of asking if you see any opportunities on the other side. Some of the examples he gave were retail lease rates, reductions in competition, anything like that. Any kind of like anything to look out for, opportunities once things start to open back up?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot, to the point of leases. I mean, obviously, real estate. This will put a number of weak businesses out of business, so there will be a lot more real estate available, and that will drive prices and costs down. Um, Certainly, banks are going to be a lot more flexible. The SBA is focused right now on programs to support existing businesses, but as we come out of this, there's going to be a lot of incentives to help new business owners get into business. So I think there'll be lots of, uh, not free but very low cost money available in the market to help fund a new startup business, especially a new franchise business which has a track record. Um, there's always a flip side to everything. So you hate to talk about opportunity when so many people are suffering, but with the unemployment rate now going sky high in a matter of weeks, that just makes it a lot easier to hire people as well as a new business owner. So a few months ago, the biggest thing that we heard from franchisees is that their biggest struggle was just hiring employees and managing employees and maintaining those employees, because it was such a low unemployment rate that they had their choice of jobs, and they would change jobs for a 50-cent hour increase. Obviously, with unemployment skyrocketing now, that will help ease some of that. So there's certainly definitely going to be opportunities. And and it's going to change industries as well. So when you think about some of the obvious ones, like the cleaning industries, I mean, there'll be lots of new commercial cleaning concepts that come out that are doing deep cleaning of office buildings or what have you. And other businesses more focused on consumer type products. And who knows, but I'm sure there's going to be lots, wherever there's disruption in a market, there's always entrepreneurs out there that are not far behind with new and interesting ideas on ways to change a marketplace, for sure.
Cool. Well, those are all the questions I had, unless someone else, um, next few seconds, had a question on their mind. Now would be a good time to ask it.
Yeah, everybody's being shy here, so anybody want to unmute themselves and ask a question live? Come on, who's gonna be the brave soul?
I see Al turned his camera on, but I think he's still muted.
Oh,
Yeah,
Al, did you? Hey, Al.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Apologies for the background noise. I'm sat in the hot tub watching this. So that's being a bit of an entrepreneur. It's really interesting. You say about taking money out of the out of the pension pots, because I think you're absolutely right. That these days, we've seen the UK today from some of the largest pension providers. That the majority of companies have now stopped paying dividends. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's if you've got a large enough pot, I think the way the world has turned out, I think you make a good point. The money could be used in your pension pot better,
Right.
by investing in the business. Um, But yep, it's been really interesting. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, if you've got a lot of money in retirement funds, certainly it is a good opportunity to, spread some of that around. And you think about today, it's just invested in the stock market generally. I mean,
Yep.
you know, if you invested that in your own business, do you think you could outperform the stock market? I mean, certainly there's a lot of small businesses that grow faster than, 7-8% a year. Um, so that it may be good use. Again, balancing, just staying diversified is key. So
Yeah, and I think there are tax advantages of doing this as well because particularly as an individual, as a director of a company, lending money to a business, there are tax advantages on this, but that's something you need to chat through with your accountant. Yeah, really interesting point you made.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, and thanks for asking about that. Any other questions from the group? Everybody's being shy.
It's the thought of me being in a hot tub, isn't it?
I'm jealous. I wish I was in a hot tub right now.
Right. We had one question pop in. What industry has had the greatest franchise success in the first 5 years? I think you might be asking kind of where would you go if you're looking to have a hot start to a franchise? So maybe a lower cost franchise, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of different hot industries, and so people, I get asked that question a lot. What's the latest hot franchise to buy, Eric? And I'm always a little nervous about what's hot, because typically things that are hot don't always last that long. um, you know if you think about, so for like the fitness industry, um, very, very trendy. Obviously the food industry, very trendy as well. And so you've got brands that have been around for years, and you've got other brands that kind of come and go very quickly. um, but I think some of the brands in the fitness industry for sure. If you look at like an Orange Theory Fitness, I mean, that brand exploded in a few years, and grew very fast. Um, and in that case, the franchisees did very well. Planet Fitness is another one. Planet Fitness has grown huge, and has done very well. And many of their franchisees are multi-location, multi-unit owners, and they've done extremely well. The flip side of that is there's other fitness brands, and I won't throw anybody under the bus, but there's other, kind of smaller boutique fitness concepts that, have grown very fast, but they haven't necessarily been all that profitable for the franchisee. So it's hard to understand, when you, as a casual, consumer observer, I guess, and you look out in the world and you see, all these new stores popping up um, of a certain brand or whatever, you think, oh my gosh, that's a really hot concept. I want to get in on that. Well, yeah, it may be good, or it may not be so good for the franchisee, you as the owner of the business. So that's important, and again, as part of your research, when you talk to franchisees, the flip side of that is, there's lots of, very large national brands that we all know and have heard of that, have been very successful at the franchisor level. But the franchisees, have kind of struggled and aren't all that, financially successful. Um, so just because a brand's been around for a long time, and is a household name, doesn't necessarily mean it's a great deal for you as the franchise owner. And again, this is, we're talking with franchisees and understanding their experience. And, and again, it's not, I don't want to just focus on the money piece, because, business ownership also offers, lifestyle choices as well. You may be a corporate worker, and you're tired of traveling, around the country, and, being away from home all the time. And so maybe money's not necessarily the key driver. It's more about being home with, the family, and being able to go to a soccer game in the afternoon for one of your kids. Maybe it's, much more of a lifestyle choice than a financial choice. So again, everybody's a little bit different, but, talking again to franchisees and understanding what their experience has been, certainly is, important. Another brand that comes to mind is a company called Kona Ice. And they showed up on our radar about a decade ago. It's a company that it's basically a shaved ice company, and they just skyrocketed to success, and they're up over, I think, 1,000 locations now. And it's essentially, they've taken the kind of the old ice cream truck model and retrofitted it into shaved ice and flavored ice model, and they do events and raise money for local organizations, communities, and schools. And it's a really great model, very flexible model. Can be seasonal, obviously, depending on where you are. If you're up in the Northeast like I am, it's pretty much a spring, summer, fall type of model more than a winter type model. But they do great. And so and then there's other brands that have kind of come and gone, exercise brands that have come and gone. So it just depends on what you get excited about. And I think that's the most important part is, it's not just about the money. It's not just about the lifestyle, obviously, but understanding, is this a business I'm excited about? At the end of the day, what does the franchise owner do that makes them successful? I can tell you, as a Kona Ice owner, franchisee, you're most likely not the person sitting in the truck serving, ice to customers. You're out there in the community networking, and you're building a network of your own trucks and doing a lot of public relations and that sort of thing. And so understanding what that skill set is of the franchise owner to be successful is important, because it's often different from the service that company provides. And again, that's where talking to franchisees can be really helpful. So I know we've been on for about an hour, so we want to wrap things up here for folks. And basically, use our website, reach out to us. My email address is just Eric, ERIC, at franchisebusinessreview.com. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. If you want to, jump on the phone at some point and chat in more detail, one-on-one, happy to do that. I don't get paid to put you. I'm not a franchise broker, so I can tell you any franchise you want to buy. I can give you my opinion on it, good, bad, whatever. But happy to answer any questions and have you, go into franchising with your eyes wide open. And again, I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of folks. And wish you all the best of success. And definitely reach out and ask as many questions as you can. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you.